I found the photograph inside a box that shouldn't have been in my possession. Gene Campbell had been my uncle, not by blood, but by the kind of connection that makes family out of strangers. He was a forensic photographer who'd worked crime scenes across New York for 30 years, documenting violence with the cold precision of a scientist. When he died in 2008, most of his equipment went to the police archives. His personal effects, a few cameras, some old negatives, a weathered leather satchel, came to me. I'd been going through his things on a rainy October afternoon when I found it. The envelope was yellowed, sealed with brittle tape, and marked in Gene's careful handwriting. Amityville Investigation, March 6, 1976. Do not reproduce. Inside was a single photograph. The image was stark, rendered in black and white infrared film that gave everything a ghostly luminescence. A hallway, empty and still. White walls, dark door frames, the geometric precision of floorboards stretching toward a vanishing point. Everything about the composition was ordinary, just an abandoned house at night, captured by an automatic camera. Yet something about the image felt wrong. I couldn't explain it at first. The hallway seemed too still, as if the air itself had stopped moving. The shadows fell at angles that didn't quite match the light source. And there, in the doorway at the end of the hall, the doorway that should have been empty, was a figure. A child, small and pale, peering around the frame. The face was indistinct, features blurred by the infrared film, but the eyes were clear. White eyes, luminous and fixed, staring directly at the camera with an intensity that made my stomach tighten. The child's hands gripped the doorframe, fingers spread wide, as if frozen mid-motion. I told myself it was just a trick of exposure. Old film did strange things, captured heat signatures, distorted light, created artifacts that looked like faces in the grain. But there was something deliberate about the way the figure stood, something conscious in that unwavering stare. The longer I looked, the more details emerged. The child wore what looked like pajamas, pale fabric that blended with the wall. The proportions seemed slightly off, the head too large, the limbs too thin. And the positioning was odd, as if the child had been standing there for a very long time, waiting for the camera to notice. That night, I brought the photograph to my desk and examined it under lamplight. In Gene's satchel, I found a notebook, his investigation log from that evening. The entries were methodical, clinical, describing equipment setup and exposure times. But March 6, 1976, was different. The handwriting grew cramped, less controlled. 8:45 p.m. Arrived at 112 Ocean Avenue. House empty since January. Lutz's abandoned all possessions. 9:30 p.m. Set up Nikon F2 on second floor landing. Infrared film, automatic intervalometer. Camera aimed down hallway toward children's bedrooms. 11 p.m. Basement investigation with Warrens. Temperature dropped to 42 degrees Fahrenheit despite heating system running. Heard footsteps overhead. All investigators accounted for. 2:47 a.m. Something moved upstairs while we were in basement. Heard it clearly, like a child running. And then, at the bottom of the page, added later in different ink, developed film 3 days after investigation. Most frames show empty hallway. Frame 24 shows something that shouldn't be there. Consulted with 3 experts. No tampering detected. No explanation found. I don't know what my camera captured. I only know it was alone in that hallway when this picture was taken. I felt a chill run through me as I read those words. The next morning, I started researching. I knew the basics. Everyone did. The Amityville Horror was one of the most famous haunting cases in American history. On November 13, 1974, Ronald Butch DeFeo Jr. murdered his parents and 4 younger siblings while they slept. All 6 were found face down in their beds, hands raised above their heads. The murders remained unexplained beyond DeFeo's confession. Once I started, I just couldn't stop. 13 months later, George and Kathy Lutz moved into the house with their 3 children. They fled after 28 days, claiming demonic possession and paranormal terror. Their story became a best-selling book, then a movie, then a cultural phenomenon that split people into believers and skeptics. But the photograph wasn't about the Lutz's claims. It was about what Jean's camera had captured when the house was empty, when no living person stood in that hallway. I found an old article from 1979, when the photograph first appeared publicly on the Merv Griffin show. Ed Warren, the paranormal investigator who'd hired Jean, described it as proof of the supernatural. Skeptics immediately attacked, claiming it showed Paul Bartz, one of the investigators, caught in an accidental exposure. But Jean's log was clear. At 2:47 a.m., when this photograph was taken, all 4 investigators, Jean, Ed Warren, Lorraine Warren, and Paul Bartz, were in the basement. The timestamp was automatic, programmed into the camera's intervalometer. No one had been upstairs. I pulled up comparison photos of Paul Bartz from that investigation. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 30s, over 6 feet tall. The figure in Jean's photograph was child-sized, no more than 4 feet, with proportions that matched a young boy. The youngest DeFeo victim had been 9-year-old John Matthew. His bedroom was at the end of that hallway, behind the doorway where the figure stood. I couldn't let it go. I reached out to the Suffolk County Police Department, asking if they had any records from the original crime scene investigation. A detective named Martinez responded, saying most files were sealed, but she'd see what she could find. 3 days later, I received a package. Inside were photocopies of police photographs from November 1974. Crime scene documentation, brutal and clinical. I forced myself to look through them, searching for anything that might explain Jean's photograph. One image stopped me cold. It showed John Matthews' bedroom, a small space with Star Wars posters on the walls and action figures on the dresser. The bed where he'd been killed was neatly made, the covers smooth despite the violence that had occurred there. But what caught my attention was the doorway. There was a mark on the doorframe, about 3 feet from the ground. The police report noted it as unidentified handprint, size consistent with juvenile. Fingerprint analysis had been inconclusive. The print was smudged, partial, impossible to match. But the positioning was exact, right where the figure in Jean's photograph had placed its hand. I compared the 2 images side by side. The doorframe in the 1974 crime scene photo showed that small handprint. The doorframe in Jean's 1976 photograph showed a child's hand in the exact same position, as if someone had never moved, as if, for 16 months, a small hand had remained pressed against that wood, waiting. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing those white eyes, that pale face peering from the doorway. I'd placed the photograph in a drawer before bed, but around 3 a.m., I woke to find it lying on my nightstand, face up. I told myself I'd taken it out and forgotten. But my hands were cold, and there was a faint smell in the room, something chemical and old, like darkroom developer. The next morning, I examined the photograph more carefully under natural light. And that's when I noticed something I'd missed before. In the corner of the image, barely visible in the infrared grain, was writing, scratched into the wall beside the doorway, so faint it could have been a shadow or a crack in the plaster. But when I enhanced the contrast on my computer, the letters became clear. Help me. My mouth went dry. I pulled up images of the house interior from various investigations. That same wall appeared in several photographs from 1976, all taken around the time of Jean's investigation. In none of them was there any writing visible. Yet in Jean's infrared photograph, taken in the middle of the night when no living person was upstairs, the words were there. I sent the enhanced image to Dr. Sarah Chen, a colleague at NYU who specialized in photographic analysis. She called me the next day, her voice tight with something between fascination and unease. "This is impossible," she said without preamble. "I've run every test I can think of. There's no evidence of tampering, no double exposure, no manipulation in the development process. The writing and the figure exist in the same layer as the rest of the image." Meaning? Meaning whatever that camera captured was actually there. Heat signature, reflective surface, or... She paused. Or something else that exists in the infrared spectrum but not visible light. "You're saying it's real?" "I'm saying the photograph is authentic. What it shows." Another pause. "I don't know what it shows. But I can tell you one more thing. I analyzed the figure's eye structure. Those aren't reflections or camera artifacts. Those are actual luminescent sources, like the pupils themselves were glowing." After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. Then I noticed my computer screen had changed. I'd left Jean's photograph displayed, the enhanced version showing the writing on the wall. But now, somehow, the image had zoomed in on the figure's face. I hadn't touched the mouse. The software had no auto-zoom function, yet there it was, filling my screen. That pale face, those white eyes staring directly at me through 49 years of time. And beneath the figure, in the black pixels of shadow, new words had appeared in the grain. Still here. I started having dreams. Always the same hallway, stretching impossibly long. Always that doorway at the end, and the small figure waiting there. In the dreams, I could hear whispers, a child's voice, thin and desperate, saying words I couldn't quite make out. When I tried to move closer, the hallway would stretch further, the distance growing with each step. I'd wake with my hands aching, as if I'd been gripping something too tightly in my sleep. During the day, I dug deeper into the DeFeo murders. The details were gruesome but straightforward. A troubled young man, drugs and family violence, a horror that unfolded in the early morning hours. The youngest victim, John Matthew, had been shot in his bed. The coroner estimated he'd died last, sometime around 3:15 a.m. But there was something in the police interviews that caught my attention. One of the first officers on scene, Detective Richard Osuna, had noted something strange in his report. Upon entering the juvenile victim's bedroom, experienced sudden temperature drop. Observed bedroom door was closed, but not latched. Doorknob showed no fingerprints, but there was what appeared to be a child's handprint on the interior doorframe, positioned as if someone had been holding the door partially open. Print did not match victim's. The report continued. Victim appeared to have died in his sleep, but positioning of body suggested he had sat up moments before death. Eyes were open. Room felt wrong in a way I cannot articulate in professional language. Other officers reported similar sensation, and then, in handwritten notes added later, returned to scene 3 days after initial investigation. Child's handprint on doorframe was still visible, but appeared to have moved lower on frame, as if the hand had slipped. This is not possible. I measured and photographed the original position. Have included both measurements in file, but cannot explain discrepancy. I sat back, my heart pounding. The handprint had moved. I found Detective Osuna through LinkedIn. He'd retired from the Suffolk County Police in 1998 and now lived in Florida. When I called him, explaining who I was and what I'd found, there was a long silence on the line. "I've spent 45 years trying to forget that house," he finally said. "Why are you bringing it back?" "Because I think something's still there. Something that was there when you first went in, and was still there when Jean Campbell took this photograph 16 months later." Another silence. Then, "Tell me what you see in the picture." I described it. The figure, the white eyes, the handprint on the doorframe, the writing on the wall. Osuna's breath was audible. The handprint I saw was 3 feet, 2 inches from the floor, right hand dominant, small fingers spread wide, like a child holding a door open to look out. That's exactly where it is in the photograph. Then it never moved. It's been there this whole time, and we just couldn't see it anymore after that first week. Like it faded from normal vision but stayed in whatever spectrum your uncle's camera could capture. You believe it's John Matthew? I believe that house recorded something. Violence that profound. Maybe it leaves an impression. Maybe some part of that child is still standing in his doorway, still holding that door open, still trying to call for help that never came. His voice broke slightly. I've seen a lot of dead children in my career, kid. But that one, that house, it felt like walking into a scream that never ended, like the walls themselves were holding on to what happened. I knew I had to go there. 112 Ocean Avenue had changed since 1974. The address had been altered to deter curiosity seekers. The iconic quarter-circle windows had been replaced. Multiple families had lived there peacefully, reporting no paranormal activity whatsoever. But I needed to see it. Needed to stand in that hallway where Jean's camera had captured something impossible. I drove to Amityville on a grey afternoon in late October. The house was easy to find, despite the address change. There was still something about it, a weight in the air around the property that made it stand out from its neighbors. A woman answered when I knocked. Middle-aged, kind-faced, clearly annoyed by another person asking about the house's history. We've lived here 12 years, she said firmly. Nothing strange has ever happened. No cold spots, no voices, no demons. It's just a house where a terrible thing happened a long time ago. Please respect our privacy. I started to apologize, to leave, but then I saw her expression change. She was looking past me, at something in the street. That's odd, she said quietly. That car's been parked there for an hour, just sitting there, engine off. I can see someone in the driver's seat, but they're not moving. I turned. There was indeed a car, an old sedan, late 90s model, and someone in the driver's seat, perfectly still. Has it been there since before I arrived? I asked. She nodded slowly. Actually, yes. I noticed it when I was making lunch. Thought maybe they were on a phone call, but... We both stared at the car. The figure inside didn't move, didn't shift position, just sat there, hands on the wheel, facing forward. A chill ran through me. What time did you first notice it? Around 3:15, I think. I remember because I was... She stopped. Why? 3:15 a.m., the time John Matthew DeFeo had died, the time George Lutz claimed to wake every night in this house. I need to see the second-floor hallway, I said. Please, just for a moment. She hesitated, then something in my expression must have convinced her. 2 minutes, and you're not taking any pictures. She led me upstairs, to that hallway I'd seen in Jean's photograph. The walls were different colors now. The door frames had been repainted, but the dimensions were exact. I walked slowly down the corridor, counting my steps, until I reached the end. John Matthew's old bedroom was now a home office. The door was partially open, and on the door frame, at exactly 3 feet 2 inches from the floor, was a mark. Not a handprint. The wood had been repainted too many times for that. But an indentation, as if something had pressed there so many times with such desperate force that it had left a permanent impression in the wood itself. I reached out slowly, placed my hand over the mark. It was ice cold. That night, back in my apartment, I finally looked at the photograph again. Really looked at it. Not at the figure, not at the eyes, but at everything else. The shadows, the angles, the way the light fell. And I saw it. The photograph had been taken at 2:47 a.m., according to Jean's log. But in the hallway's far window, barely visible, a dark square in the wall, there was a reflection. Faint, almost invisible, but there, a face, pressed against the glass from outside, looking in. Not the child's face. This was different. Older, male, with the expression of rage so profound it had somehow burned itself into the infrared film. I enhanced the reflection, adjusted the contrast. The features became clearer. It was Ronald DeFeo Jr. But that was impossible. DeFeo had been in prison since November 1975. He couldn't have been at the house on March 6, 1976, unless what Jean's camera had captured wasn't just an image from that night. Unless it had somehow photographed something that existed across time. An impression left by violence so profound it echoed backward and forward, showing not just the victim, but the perpetrator, frozen together in that hallway forever. I pulled out Jean's log again, read his final entry. Something moved upstairs while we were in basement, like a child running. Running from what? I found Jean's will among his papers. Most of it was standard, equipment dispersed, a small insurance payout to his sister. But there was a handwritten addendum, dated 2007, to my nephew. If you found the Amityville photograph, you need to know what I never told anyone. I went back to that house in 1983, 7 years after the investigation. I needed to know if I'd imagined it all, if the photograph was just some fluke of the film. I brought a new camera, set it up in the same position on the second-floor landing, used the same infrared film. The figure was still there, still standing in that doorway, still staring at the camera with those white eyes. But this time, it had moved forward. Just a few inches, but it had definitely moved, as if it was getting closer. I destroyed those negatives, burned them. But I kept the first photograph because I needed evidence of what I'd seen, needed proof I wasn't losing my mind. If you're reading this, if you've seen the photograph, I need you to understand. That child is not haunting that house. That child is trapped there, reliving the moment of his death over and over, unable to move forward or let go. And whatever took that photograph, whatever allowed us to capture what should be invisible, opened a door we don't know how to close. Do not go to that house. Do not try to help. Some things are beyond our reach. My hands were shaking as I finished reading. That night, at 3:15 a.m., my phone chimed. An email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just an attachment. I almost deleted it, almost. But something made me open it. It was a photograph, the same hallway, the same doorway, the same figure. But now the child was closer, much closer. Standing in the middle of the hallway, not the doorway. Arms at its sides, white eyes fixed on the camera. And behind it, barely visible in the shadow, was another figure, taller, holding something that glinted in the infrared light. A rifle. The email address disappeared when I tried to reply, like it had never existed. But the photograph remained. And in the corner, in that same scratched handwriting, were new words. Don't look for me. He's still here too. I sealed Jean's photograph in a lead-lined box, placed it in a safe deposit box at the bank downtown. I haven't opened it since. The house at 112 Ocean Avenue still stands. Families still live there, unaware of what the walls remember, what the hallway holds. But sometimes, late at night, I get emails from that same impossible address. Always at 3:15 a.m. Always a photograph attached. The figure gets closer in each one. Last week, the photograph showed the child standing at the end of my hallway, the one outside my bedroom. I don't open the emails anymore, but I can hear them arriving, the soft chime of my phone in the darkness. And sometimes, when I lie very still, I can hear something else. Small footsteps, getting closer. A child's voice, thin and desperate. Help me. Please. before he comes back. And beneath it, another sound. Heavier footsteps, deliberate and slow. Following. Jean was right. We opened a door we don't know how to close, and now that child, trapped for 49 years in that moment of terror, has found another way out. Through the photographs, through the cameras that captured what shouldn't exist. Through me. My hand aches sometimes, as if I've been gripping a doorframe too tightly. And when I look in the mirror, just for a moment, my eyes catch the light wrong. They look white, luminous, like something that exists in the infrared spectrum but not visible light. Like something that was photographed once, a long time ago, and has been trying to escape ever since. The photograph is sealed away. Jean is dead. The house has moved on. But I think about that handprint on the doorframe. The one that moved. The one that stayed. The one that pressed so hard, it left a permanent mark in the wood. And I wonder, when does something stop being a ghost and start being real? When does the photograph become the person? When does the captured moment become the only moment that exists? I don't have answers. I only have emails arriving at 3:15 a.m. and the growing certainty that what Jean's camera captured that night in March 1976 wasn't just an image. It was a door. And something is finally coming through.